Hello, I'm Dawn Durham, and welcome to Patton Pod. The Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, PaTTAN, develops resources with the intent of sharing these tools with those in the field to better help and serve our students. Kristin Starosta, a consultant with the Inclusive Practices Initiative, joins us today to share information about the Supplementary Aids and Services Toolkit. Kristin, thanks so much for being on PaTTANpod today.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm happy to be here.
We want to start right away with trying to understand exactly what is the Supplementary Aids and Services Toolkit. Can you help us out with that?
Sure. So its formal definition is that it's a structured method for analyzing the instructional, physical, and social general education and classroom environment for the purpose of planning for an individual student. But really, I like to think of it as a problem-solving process. So it brings together a team that has multiple different perspectives, different resources, different areas of expertise, brings everybody together to look at the classroom environment. And that's another foundational piece of the toolkit. The idea of the toolkit is that we're thinking about the classroom environment for sources of change. So when we're talking about barriers to learning, we're looking for those barriers in the classroom environment. We're not looking for barriers to learning in the student. So for example, if the student is reading on a first grade reading level and they're in a fifth grade classroom, we wouldn't say that the student's reading level is the barrier. We would say that the barrier is in the reading materials and how they're presented and the options for access. So that's a change in thinking, but it really frees up your thinking when you think about the classroom environment in that way. It gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more options of things to do.
So I want to highlight a few things you said here. We have to remember that to correctly identify the barrier that's causing the student to not access the best learning that he or she can. And I think that's a key piece. And you had said that this is really not so much as a toolkit as much as a problem-solving process to really pull all the team members together to have that conversation and to really be looking at these barriers, how do we identify them, and then how do we break them down to give students the best chance of success. So that kind of leads me right into the next question is, how do I choose or when would I choose to pull together this problem-solving team and to hold a toolkit meeting? Who would benefit from that? How do I do it and who would benefit from it?
So the benefit and the outcome we're looking for at the end of a toolkit meeting is a list of environmentally referenced strategies. So a list of strategies that are socially valid, that fit for that classroom environment and fit for their individual student. But practically speaking, schools and families and students use the toolkit for a lot of different reasons. A student may be transitioning to a new classroom or a new school. I was a part of a toolkit meeting where it was the spring of fifth grade for the student, and next year they were going to a new middle school building. So the toolkit was used for a proactive purpose there. It can be used for a really focused purpose. Maybe things aren't working in social studies and we need to do something differently. Or Karen Deary, who's one of our colleagues in the Harrisburg office, she even was a part of a toolkit meeting where the student was going to be included in a woodshop kind of classroom. So woodshop brings a lot of big equipment, a lot of rules for safety, really just different ways of learning. So the toolkit was used to help include a student in that environment.
So I just want to jump in there. When we think about this is really either a little bit more broad scope or, as you had said, a little bit more targeted scope when we think about how we can use this or who would benefit it.
Right, and that would be a good thing to think about when you're starting the meeting, because we do find that it's a little bit more effective and efficient if we do focus in on like a classroom or a time of day or a subject area. But like I said, in the case of the student transitioning to middle school, it did help with that too, because that's a big thing to plan for, and this gave us a structure and a framework to plan for that transition. In terms of the benefits, I think going back to that idea of the team, so bringing those multiple perspectives, as teachers, we all at PaTTAN, we all started out as teachers. We remember being kind of alone in the classroom, and to have that opportunity and that time to sit down with people from different perspectives and different areas of expertise, that brings a real benefit. The understanding of different perspectives too, especially from the family perspective. I was a part of a Toolkit meeting where the father of the student was in attendance, and he was able to ask a lot of clarifying questions so that he could better understand what school looked like for his son and what the instruction looked like. And as a result of those asking those questions and being a part of the instructional discussion, he was able to offer some things that he and his family could do at home to help his son in school. So that brings a real benefit too. And lastly, I think because we're looking for barriers to learning in the classroom environment, we're kind of taking some focus or pressure off the student, and we're really focusing on the student's strengths and planning from the student's strengths and interests. That's one of the first steps we do in the toolkit, is talking about who the student is and what they like to do and what they're really good at. And the facilitator and the team come back to that throughout the process in order to highlight that and plan from that perspective.
It really keeps the child at the center, and that's really what we should be thinking about when we. And you had said it so perfectly, is it takes a little bit of pressure off the student from thinking they themselves are the barrier to learning, because that's not the case. It's the environment that's around them that may be causing a barrier, and therefore not allowing for that complete access to successful learning. So I'm glad that you said that. You had mentioned the family perspective. So this is a problem-solving meeting, a toolkit process in which the family is a part of as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So anyone who's important to that student's life, either school-wise or again, the family brings an important perspective to the school process as well. So it's definitely the general education teacher, because again, this is about planning for instruction in that general education environment. The special education teacher who's supporting that classroom and that student. We would want the building level administrator to be there in case any changes have to be made or any resources. The special education administrator, and then any other school professionals who are supporting that student. So speech language, OT, PT, assistive technology. Assistive technology consultants are always a great resource to have during the toolkit meeting, because they just know so many things and resources that the classroom teacher isn't always aware of.
Sure.
So a broad-based team. And if I could clarify too, just about what I mean by team, because a common question that comes up is kind of, how does this fit into the IEP process?
Okay.
So definitely it informs the IEP process, because by the end of the meeting, we're hoping to have a list of strategies, resources, supplementary aids and services that could be beneficial to the student. Most often the team wants to test some things out and see how it works, what needs to be done in order to support the implementation. But then separately, the IEP team will make decisions about what from that list, or what from what was tried, what is going to make its way into the IEP document. So there may be overlap in the team that is a part of the toolkit and the team that's a part of the IEP, and that makes sense, and that's okay. But they're definitely separate processes, and we're not making IEP decisions at a toolkit meeting.
But the toolkit informs the IEP. The toolkit meeting informs the IEP. I think that's a good clarification. So thank you for making sure that we talked about that. So sure. I'm sitting here and I'm listening. I'm thinking, well, how do I initiate this? How do I initiate a toolkit meeting?
Sure. So really anyone can. Most likely it's a teacher or administrator. If I were a teacher and I heard about this process and I had a student, I would probably approach my building level administrator or my special education administrator, because they'll be, then you can talk about like how to approach the family and give the family information about the process. They'll an administrator would also be able to reach out and know if there's either a trained facilitator within the LEA, or reach out to the local intermediate unit to see if there's a trained facilitator there. But families can and should and are able to go to their LEA and say, I heard about this toolkit process. I think it would help my son or daughter. What do you think? So that's definitely an option too.
So if I'm a family member, a teacher, an administrator, where would I want to go, or where can I go to find more information out about the Supplementary Aids and Services Toolkit? Because this sounds like something we all should be aware of and we should be using on a more regular basis.
Absolutely, and we definitely hope people reach out. So if you go to our PaTTAN website, there's a horizontal bar, it's kind of like green-blue color, and it has different sections. And one of the sections says supports, and there's a drop-down menu. You click on inclusive practices, and that takes you to our main initiative page. On that main page, there's another blue bar that has Supplementary Aids and Services Toolkit as a section. If you click on that, that takes you to a page that describes some of the foundational pieces of the toolkit and also provides a link to OnCourse, which is an online learning platform that our Pittsburgh office has been using to generate online learning courses, modules for various different things, one of which is the toolkit. So you can go on that course, create a profile for free, and log into that course, and it will give you all the foundational pieces, why the toolkit was developed, what the components look like, what a meeting looks like. It will give you access to all the documents, all the components of the toolkit, as well as supporting documents that we've developed over the years to help make the process easier. That OnCourse toolkit course also has information if you want to be a trained facilitator. If you're in an LEA, we'd love to have more LEAs have trained facilitators with them, so they can kind of very easily do a toolkit meeting. But so if you're in an LEA or if you're in an intermediate unit and want to be a trained facilitator, there's more information on that course about how to do that.
That's wonderful. So if we go to the PaTTAN website, www.pattan.net, and kind of drill down through supports to inclusive practices initiative, and we kind of drill a little farther, we'll get to this Supplementary Aids and Services Toolkit, and we can really explore what's available out there. And I have to be honest with you, I'm shocked that I didn't know about it before this. This is something that we really should be talking about widely across the Commonwealth, because these are resources that can be used and should be used in a classroom by family members, by administrators, by teachers, by teams. As you had said, this is a problem-solving team. This is taking a look at what barriers exist and how do we break down those barriers to allow full access to successful learning. So I'm so glad that you were able to come on PaTTANpod and talk about this. This is wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing all this information with us.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm glad for the opportunity.
So let me ask you this, and we ask this of all of our PaTTANpod guests. We want to inspire others to grow. We want to inspire them to grow professionally, educationally, and we want them to really kind of seek out more information and to be inspired. What advice might you offer to those in the field to inspire their educational growth?
So you gave me this question ahead of time, so I was thinking a little bit about that, and I thought back to when I was a young teacher, and young both in age and skill. And I came across applied behavior analysis and positive behavior interventions and supports as a framework and a philosophy that helped me help my students. Because as teachers, it's, we want the answer. We have this question or this problem, or, we're struggling with a student and we want the answer. There's never the answer. But looking to frameworks like PBIS, or last week I was at Universal Design for Learning and Training out in Pittsburgh. So looking to those frameworks that give you ideas about how to think about your classroom, how to think about your instruction proactively, how to think about your interactions with students ahead of time so that you set up the positive rather than setting up the negative. So that's kind of how I thought of this question, just really looking for a framework that fits how you think about the world, and will help you think through your classroom environment in order to help your students be more successful.
I think that's great advice for all of us to really reflect and think and seek out that framework that matches us as a person, us as a teacher, and then how do we make that work in our classroom for our students to give them success. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kristen, for being on PaTTANpod. Thank you for sharing the supplementary aids and services toolkit. I think this is something we all should be tapping into and using, and we know that we can visit the PaTTAN website for more information and more assistance, and potentially we'll have our facilitator list grow across the Commonwealth, which would be a huge benefit for all of our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you in the field. You inspire educational growth in your students every day. A special thank you to John Ragsdale for producing this podcast. We'll see you next time on PaTTANpod.